Have you seen The Godfather or Peaky Blinders? The way their presence commands respect without saying a single word? Yet time and time again, I see GMs completely mess this up by using words that murder the mood because they built a flaky, surface-level gang that makes their players roll their eyes while they reach for their phones in "I don't care." But we can do better because you're not most GMs, so by the end of this video, you will have a crime syndicate for your homebrew worlds that your players will never forget. But how will we do this? Well, my name is Assassin and I want you to look good. So today, I'm gonna give you the 5 basic tools you will need to make better crime syndicates, including a 6th secret I've added that will blow your players away. But don't take my word for it. Grab a pen and paper or open your note app and follow along, and together we'll make a better D&D crime syndicate. The first thing your crime syndicate needs is an iconic name. I met a crime boss in Malaysia who ran his own syndicate. The people in his town called his gang the Umbrellas because they would stroll in groups down the street wielding umbrellas as walking sticks everywhere they went, even on the hottest sunny days. So when someone didn't pay up in time, they would beat them with their umbrellas until the metal bent out of shape. Which leads us to the second thing your syndicate needs: a distinguishing feature your players will never forget. This is a powerful tool you can use because the unique feature of your gang tells an unspoken story. This could be a unique weapon like the umbrella, or a predominant item they wear like antlers or pig guts. But why do your gang members wear pig guts? You don't have to answer this for your players, but when you make them believe there's a hidden reason behind it, you will steal your players' focus harder than a greedy rogue perusing a palace. Perhaps people in your gang are gentlemen who hold the door open for women and treat others chivalrously. Maybe they have tribal tattoos. Imagine a gang where each of its members wear a razor-bladed top hat they frisbee into the faces of their victims. Or maybe they're all proud, shirtless bodybuilders who get a thrill off showing their abs. Take a moment to pause the video, then give your crime syndicate an iconic name and one distinguishing feature that will make your players scratch their heads, then press play when you're done. Now that we have your gang's identity, it's time to fill your syndicate with guts. No, not pig guts. Let me explain. Every crime syndicate needs 3 organs for its body to function. But listen closely, because without these 3 organs, your players will never take your crime syndicate for real. The first organ is the goal. But while the goal of every gang is to gain more control, the question you need to ask yourself is, why does my crime syndicate want control? Perhaps your syndicate loves fashion and desires the ability to control how they look, to wear diamonds and rubies on all of their clothes. Or perhaps your syndicate wants control over their ability to put food on the table for their impoverished families. Or maybe the reason is far more twisted, because a rival crime family burned down your gang's grandpappy's farm with him inside it. So your syndicate will stop at nothing until they've drained every last drop of blood out from your rival syndicate's rotting corpses. Pause the video now and write down the reason why your syndicate wants more control, then press play. The second organ your gang needs to function is this. Now you're probably thinking, what does a large, bearded, furry carrying a barrel of oranges have to do with my crime syndicate? And the answer is everything. Because in order to survive, a thriving gang needs funding. So what is the juice that fuels your crime syndicate? To make this easy, pick one industry in your fantasy world for your crime syndicate to control. Perhaps your gang runs the cattle industry in town, or the citrus market. Maybe your gang's industry is more addictive, like poppies, or my personal favorite substance, sugar. The industry you choose will help shape the visual traits of your syndicate. For example, let's pretend your gang controls the ivory market, so each member wears ivory tusks because that's where their money comes from. So pause the video, jot down the industry that your crime syndicate controls, then press play. Now, I really like this next section, and your players will too, because now that your gang has a goal and the money to fund all of their ambitions, we come to the final organ your crime syndicate needs to survive, which is focus. Because crime syndicates use the profits from their illegal dealings to fund their weapons, bribes, pleasures, and infrastructure. So these are the 4 pillars of spending we will use to find out how competent your crime syndicate really is. But each syndicate will look wildly different based on where they focus their spending. But what happens if your crime syndicate spends too much on weapons? When you give the strongest weapons to your gang members, you increase the risk of your crime boss losing control or getting backstabbed. So a weapons-heavy gang might have a high rate of mutiny. But what happens if your crime syndicate spends too much on bribes? Over-bribing will drain your bank accounts faster than a Pegasus wearing boots of swiftness on each hoof. Once you're broke, you're a joke as the control begins to slip between your fingers. But what happens when your crime syndicate overspends on pleasures? Pleasures lead to addictions, which give outside forces leverage over your gang members.
We'll give you some sugary donuts if you satisfy our demands.
You can expect your syndicate to grow soft and become everyone's slave. But what if your crime syndicate overspends in the fourth pillar, infrastructure? Then they've made the right choice for themselves. Their city will remain oppressed, and their syndicate will hold their control for generations to come. So pause and roll 1d4 to decide which of these 4 pillars your gang spends most of their money on. Then press play when you're done. The next thing we want to do is create the infamous us and them mindset that both crime syndicates and high school cliques are so well known for. We can do this by giving your syndicate a unique culture. For starts, let's discuss your gang's initiation. What test must new recruits pass to join your syndicate's ranks? Perhaps new members must steal a valuable item on behalf of your syndicate. Maybe they're beaten to a pulp by other gang members to test their willpower. Or darker still, they may be tasked with offing a rival gang member. Then, once they pass their test, a welcome ritual is in order. So how will new members be welcomed into your syndicate? Perhaps they are urged to chug a bottle of brandy, or maybe they must eat the heart of a living snake. Adding a test for new members and a welcome ritual once they've passed gives your gang members an attitude of accomplishment your players will feel. So pause the video and write down your gang's initiation test and welcome ritual for new members who succeed. Press play when you're done. But roleplay can die flat without the right prompts, so let's give your gang members 3 rules by which they live their lives, starting with the social rule. Perhaps all members are expected to never ask questions, or perhaps all members must be good at rizzing up strangers. But to really ground your gang members, we will need to add a tactical rule for them to follow. Maybe all members are expected to wear a pocket watch to keep track of time, or trained to become masters at hand-to-hand combat, forging their hands and feet into lethal weapons. But if we're gonna brand your gang deep into the minds of your players, then we need to add one more key rule to your gang's code of conduct, and this rule needs to be something weird. Perhaps all gang members are expected to wear their pants on their heads, or to carry lit candles during the day. Maybe they're forced to speak in posh accents, even if they're not used to it. Imagine a new recruit who is ashamed of his backwater accent because he was told his people are trash, and he'll never amount to anything. So he tries to hide his accent by using the posh, rich accent of his gang, but he's terrified your players will see through his disguise. Throwing around this kind of chaotic energy will increase your players' suspicions, making them roleplay even harder. So pause the video and write down 1 social rule, 1 tactical rule, and 1 weird rule for your gang members to follow, then press play. The final part of gang culture is the most awkward one to discuss. But what do we do when a member from your gang breaks the rules? Are they tarred and feathered? Are they paraded naked through town? Are they beaten with steel rods as they cry in anguish? Or do they watch their pets get eaten before their very eyes? Be as cruel as you like here. This is, after all, your crime syndicate. Pause the video to write down the punishment your crime syndicate serves to those members who break its rules. Press play when you're done. But what do the townsfolk think of your syndicate? Do people make way for your gang members as they stroll down the streets? Or do they laugh at the mention of your crime syndicate's name? If your crime syndicate is big and scary, then we want to show they're strong instead of telling your players they're strong. Listen carefully, because this is how you shouldn't describe a scary gang to your players.
Everyone was terrified of the crime syndicate.
But now watch closely, because here is how you should describe a scary gang to your players. The birds stopped chirping as the crime syndicate strolled down the empty streets, the townsfolk shivering as they stole quick glances from their windowsills. But what if nobody knows your syndicate? Perhaps your gang works undercover like a secret society, pulling strings from behind the shadows. How well known is your crime syndicate? Is it famous or is it hidden? Pause the video and write down how well known your gang is, then press play when you're done. But while the next question we must answer has no relation to your gang's level of fame, it is just as crucial to discuss, and that is your gang's likability. Do your townsfolk lay in bed at night wishing your gang members would die of a heart attack? Or do they erect shrines of your gang members and buy paintings of the crime lord to hang in their house? Pause the video and write down whether your crime syndicate is hated, tolerated, appreciated, or idolized. Then press play. But how comfy are your townsfolk with airing their thoughts? Do they shiver in horror at the thought of your crime syndicate saying only nice things in public for fear of being brutally beaten? Or do they scream their opinions from the rooftops knowing your crime syndicate can't touch them? Now we have to be careful because this has nothing to do with how strong your syndicate really is, but everything to do with how powerful your gang is perceived to be in the eyes of the public. So pause the video and write down whether your crime syndicate is perceived as harmless, imposing, dangerous, or terrifying. Then press play when you're done. This here is Billy, but there's more to Billy than meets the eye. You see, Billy went from being a little farm boy shoveling horse poop to running the largest cattle rustling ring in western Arigata. But what brought Billy to this lifestyle of black cow magic? This leads us to the glue that will hold your syndicate together, your crime boss. Now how did your crime boss get their start? Billy started cattle rustling because his old man butchered his childhood, picking beef for no reason until one day he left to milk the cows but never came home. Perhaps your crime boss backstabbed the previous leader to gain control, or maybe your crime boss inherited the gang from his cunning mother. Whatever the case, pause the video to write down how your crime boss got their start. Keep it between 1 or 2 sentences, then press play. Now that we've written your crime boss's rise to power, let's add dimension by giving them a pet peeve. If you want to really ramp up the drama, then give your crime boss a pet peeve that your players will trigger quickly. Perhaps your crime boss hates it when people are polite. Maybe your crime boss is crazy about veggies and can't stand it when people don't take good care of their health. Pause the video and write 1 pet peeve for your crime boss. But even Superman has his kryptonite, so what does it take to break your crime boss? Giving your crime boss a vice puts a chink in their armor for your players to exploit, if they're paying attention. So let's give your crime boss a vice. Popular vices include alcohol, gambling, lovemaking, or tobacco, but you, my friend, have been gifted with a beautiful brain, bursting with a wealth of brilliant ideas, so pause the video and go nuts as you write down your crime boss's crippling vice. But sadly, we have failed as a team if we leave your crime boss as a mere mortal, because if we're going to write a better crime syndicate, then it's not only our job, it's our duty to immortalize your crime boss in the memories of your players. Which means we're going to need to give your crime boss a unique accessory that tells everyone watching that they're in charge. Now the goal is not to make your accessory scary or intimidating, but rather to add an item that your fantasy crime boss might think is scary or intimidating, because we're not trying to impress your players. On the contrary, we're trying to draw their attention. So if they begin making fun of your crime boss's unique item, then you, my friend, have won the game. Perhaps your crime boss sports a ginormous feathered hat or tall platform ivory tusk heels. Maybe your crime boss's teeth have been fully swapped out for gold ones, but one of your sharp players observes that their teeth are made from cheap fool's gold instead of the real stuff. This will give your players the content to build roleplay drama at your table, the kind of drama they won't forget. But before I give you my 6th secret that will blow your players away, pause the video to write down your crime boss's unique accessory that shouts, "Look at me!" But what if I told you there was a sinister cult that writes homebrew with such potency that they never fail to keep their players' hearts racing as they lean forward on the edge of their seats, thirsting for more? If you want to know the true reason why the cult of Matthews is so deadly when it comes to writing good homebrew, then you're not going to want to miss out on my next video here.